Formula E World Championships fan base hit new heights. So why on earth are they making it a paid sport to watch?
It's a very good question. Well,
Your career has seen a huge variety of different presenting jobs. Become well known for your coverage of electric vehicles.
they told me about this new racing championship called Formula E. I thought, that sounds really rubbish, because why would you want to watch quiet cars go around a racetrack? We probably have more overtakes in one race than Formula One has had in the whole season. Formula E is not a replacement for Formula One. Just because you have another child doesn't mean you love your first child any less.
When you had your first child, that it would affect your career in any way?
Totally. It's. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's hard. I've had to go back to work way earlier than most people would.
What's been one of the toughest challenges you've overcome?
Wow. The next few months were hard because then I had sleepless nights being like, oh my God, have I done the right thing? This is really difficult.
Nicki, a familiar face to many on the TV for Motorsport and automotive viewers from around the world. I'm sure you'd be recognised by a lot of our audience. However, in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? I think I'm still trying to work that one out. So my name's Nicki Shields. I have been a motorsport presenter for, at least 10, 12, closer to 15 years. I am sort of the host of Formula E, the fully electric racing championship, but have done many different forms of motorsport over the years. I'm also a mum of 3 little ones. Currently, what have I got? 3 under 5. So you can imagine life's a bit mad at the moment.
Yeah, we've just watched you flying around, coming out of the house to get out here, get in the van, and kind of, at least you've got an hour and a half to kind of switch off a little bit and have some zen moments.
Yeah, can I have a quick nap?
Although I'm not sure quite what Nicki's children thought watching her get into the back of a soundproof van, but other than that, Mummy.
They just went, bye-bye.
If I asked you to think back and in hindsight, select a moment from your youth or when you were growing up before you knew you were going to be a motorsport presenter or where you've got to today that made you fall in love with what you do now or set you on that path and journey, what do you think a moment would be?
I don't think there was ever one particular moment. However, I think just obviously the reason I love my job and the industry I work in is because I love motorsport and have that passion. And that's been something that, comes from the heart, because when I was growing up as a child, my mum calls it the house of trouser, which is basically we live in a house where all we do is talk about cars and watch motorsport. So my dad was really passionate about it. And so naturally, I became passionate about it too. And I think for me, it's so nostalgic watching the F1 on a Sunday afternoon, because I used to just kind of like cozy up to him on the sofa on a Sunday afternoon and watch that together. And that was our kind of special time together. I did lots of different things with my mum, but that was the quality time I had with my dad. And watching that, I thought it was, amazing, exhilarating, what a cool sport to be in. And always thought one day I would grow up to be a Formula One driver. Little did I realise, to become a Formula One racing driver, you've probably got to be in the car from about 5 years old and put a huge amount of effort, money, and focus on it. And clearly I was not doing that. So I was a little bit naive, I would say, when I was younger. But the realisation that I wasn't going to be a Formula One driver kind of sunk in probably when I was about 12, 13, and realised that I probably should have spent every weekend at the karting track. I did a bit of karting, but not to the same extent that you need to do. So yeah, it was just always a hobby, always a passion, never, ever, ever a career. Never thought I would be working in this industry.
And it's quite cool to hear that instead of just kind of watching the racing and taking it in from a digital perspective, so in your youth, you were actually getting involved in it. You were physically out on karts and going racing and getting involved. Yes. Paint us a photo of, or kind of like a picture of what that would have looked like when you were younger.
I think I was just always very competitive. Probably still am. And so whenever my dad would be like, right, we're going to take Chris to the karting track, my brother, but well, I'm coming too. I want to go faster than him. So I think that was one of the main reasons that I wanted to go with them, just to be competitive and try and win. So that was one side of it. And then I guess we used to go to Brands Hatch quite a bit to watch like British touring cars and things like that. So that's...
So your dad was totally consumed by loving motorsport racing, and you kind of got brought along in that whole life. And you mentioned you had siblings as well. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, grew up in Twickenham.
Not too far from here.
Yeah, not far at all. So, I mean, I was literally born in Hammersmith. I was actually born in the same hospital that I had my children and that my husband was born in. So that just shows how wild we are. But I like to think that I sort of travel around the world, but then home is always in the same place, which is lovely.
So before you were traveling around the world, what was your first job?
Oh my God. Well, what do we call first job? I mean, my actual first job when I was about 13 years old was working in the local pharmacy on a Tuesday and a Thursday from 4:30 to 6:30 for 2 hours in the evening after school. And I earned £3 an hour. Cha-ching. So that was £6 an evening, £12 a week.
They say London
50
pays.
something or other. Yeah, exactly. Over the course of the month. And I just sort of just tapped away, saved a little bit each time. And yeah, but that was my first job. My first proper job was when I left uni. I really randomly worked in the city. I got a job as an equity finance trader looking after the Scandinavian markets. So that was my first job at UBS.
So I was going to ask, were you quite intellectually kind of okay growing up? Were you the kind of top of the class? Were you kind of theatrical? Did you enjoy performing? Kind of what were those bits that from an educational perspective growing up? I'm trying to kind of get everything together to understand how you got to where you are today, being a broadcaster, someone that stands in front of the
random,
camera,
isn't it?
under
How
pressure.
did I get there?
Yet we're hearing about you managing Scandinavian markets in London.
So the reason I got that job was because a mate of mine did economics at uni. My best mate, we were going traveling. They were like, apply for an internship. It pays loads of money and then we can go traveling afterwards. So I thought, okay, good idea. So literally, that's what I did. Got an internship and then they offered me a job at the end. So I thought, I can go off traveling around the world and come back to this really well-paid job. So that's how I ended up going into the city. Again, it was never really a plan. It was never what I wanted to do. It just happened.
And most people search for that thing that one day is going to give them the amount of money that they need to be able to do something and kind of climb that ladder to get what they want. I almost think in some respects it can be even harder when you're in a position that you're actually earning good money to then go off and pursue what you want to do, because it makes the decision really difficult. So how does that person end up as a broadcaster and presenting Formula E?
It was really hard, actually. So I ended up working in the city doing this like crazy job. I am not a morning person. I had to be at my desk for 6:45 every day. Like that was the hardest part of the job. The actual job itself was quite good fun, and I quite like the sort of the exhilaration of like responding to the markets. You're kind of it's a bit different to live TV, but it's in the moment. It's not about writing
decision making
presentations to pitch in 3 weeks time and we'll get a decision in 5 months. I mean, that's just sounds very boring, but anyway, so sort of having to respond to the markets, I did really enjoy it. However, it was never an industry that I wanted to go into, and I always remember this is a defining moment. There we go, you asked me a defining moment and I've got one. I was offered a new job at a different bank which I had applied to, got the role, got the contract through, negotiated this great salary that I was really proud of. And then my mum said to me, I remember over the phone, I called her. I remember exactly where I was. I was on Carnaby Street. I spoke to my mum on the phone. I was like, I've got this new contract. She was like, well done. Are you excited? I said, no. She was like, well, why are you doing it then? Like, if you're not excited about your new job, what's the point of doing it? And I was like, well, it's considered in most people's eyes like a really good job. It's obviously difficult to get a job like that. I should be thankful that I've got it and it pays really good salary. And she was like, well, if it's not what you want to do, then you shouldn't be doing it. And so I don't know whether that was the right advice. because all my friends in banking are probably going to retire any day now with big houses and lovely Ferraris in their garage. But that's by the by. So anyway, I made the decision to actually call up this new employer and say, actually, I've had a change of heart. And then I went out into the big wide world and started deciding what I really wanted to do. And that was work in broadcasting as a science communicator, because I went to Bristol University. I studied biological sciences. That's where all the wildlife documentaries are made. It's where the National History Units are based, which does all the BBC David Attenborough programmes. That's what I really wanted to do.
Wow. There's quite an eclectic mix of different stuff there, from finance to understanding the sciences behind like TV and productions like that. And then you've ended up in motorsport. There's like three completely conflicting things going on there. But what I kind of get in the picture and sort of building together is that you're quite an analytical person.
Yes.
I imagine there's
brain.
definitely maths brain and a great deal of detail. However, for such an analytical mind to make a decision to just not do something that was in front of you with such good returns and numbers when you didn't actually know what you were going to go and do. So how did you get a first job presenting something in motorsport?
Well, let's say the next few months were hard, because then I had sleepless nights being like, oh my God, have I done the right thing? This is really difficult. What am I doing? Yeah, I've got no experience. And also, obviously, when you've got no experience, you've got to accept jobs that pay rubbish money. Massive credits to my now husband, boyfriend at the time, who was like, don't worry, come and live with me. You don't need to worry about bills or, paying rent or whatever. Just give it a whirl for 6 months, see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, there'll be a job, for you somewhere in the city if that's what you really want to do. So that was sort of the olive branch, is that the phrase?
Yeah.
That made me go, okay, let's see what happens. And then I know I've tried, right? And then I won't live to regret any decisions. So I was like, right, I've got to go for it for 6 months. And I did all sorts. Couldn't even tell you what my first job was.
So you're sat there with 6 months ahead of you, a blank canvas.
Yeah.
And sometimes things happen when you're moving and busy, but sometimes it's really difficult to make things happen when you're thinking about making them happen.
Yeah.
Almost like the whiteboard in front of you. So what was your first moves into deciding kind of what you wanted to do and then how you did it?
So I always knew I wanted to work in around science and the environment. Again, never thought about cars. That was still just a passion.
I've just made another connection now.
That was just the hobby, at the side. It was never an industry I was going to work in. So I was like, I did science, biological sciences at Bristol. Let's go down environment, wildlife, sustainability. Cool. That's what I want.
Electric cars.
Well, exactly. That is the next piece of the puzzle. Because I then got some experience hosting a sustainability series. It was sort of branded content. And it was amazing, actually. We tracked this guy. He did an expedition to Antarctica, and we were doing live chats with him every day. It was a little studio show. It was called Willis Resilience. And yeah, it was amazing to be part of. But part of that, we did it wasn't even a whole show. I think it was literally a VT, like a 3-minute piece on the future of electric cars. And that is also one of those career-defining moments.
Well, your career has seen a huge variety of different presenting jobs, and you are a frequent face now of ITV, Channel 4 and various other platforms, but you are very well known, or have become well known, for your coverage of electric vehicles. Yes. Most doubtly, just because of the private companies and work that we've seen you do, but also the work with Formula E.
Yeah.
That great big juggernaut that seems to be moving forward at the minute. But it's amazing to then understand how that connection is made, how somebody ends up there, when it could be through things that you'd never think, like studying of biological sciences at university would end you on a Formula E grid, enjoying your passion of motorsport and it all coming together. The bit that I can't seem to get my head around is how you end up in front of the microphone doing the broadcasting part. Where does that fit in?
So, having done this sort of, future of electric cars, did a big interview with Renault. They told me about this new racing championship called Formula E. I thought, that sounds really rubbish, because why would you want to watch quiet cars go around a racetrack? F1 is my passion. That's noisy. Give me big engines. So I thought, oh, well, good luck with that. See you later. And then went home, thought about it that evening and thought, well, do you know what? I do love motorsport, but I can also see the purpose of Formula E. You know, ultimately, we are going to have to move in that direction. So I very much saw the future of Formula E in the direction it was heading. So decided to get in touch with the production company. And at that point, obviously, I had enough presenting experience I'd actually already done a little bit at Goodwood already. So I'd done a bit of presenting in motorsport to help them kind of.
You have the perfect voice for Goodwood as well. the revival, the race. I could just hear it. I can hear you over the tannoys now, dressed in the most appropriate outfit on the lawns presenting that show. I don't think there's a perfect presenter for a show if I've ever seen one in my life.
Can you just remind Goodwood that, please? Just so they make sure they book me again next year. So I'd done a bit of motorsport presenting, and also in my first meeting, actually it wasn't my first meeting, it must have been like the second or third, with the sort of board of Formula E, the production company, and they were interviewing me, and they asked why they should choose me, and I gave them a lesson in how a lithium-ion battery worked, and did it on a little board and showed them how the chemistry of that worked. So we're like, oh, okay, so she can talk about motorsport and she can talk about the science behind the battery technology in a car. That's why the science degree was important, because that got me the job.
But you thought, even yourself at the beginning, who the hell is going to watch this? And even me, fascinated to talk to you about Formula E today. When I was doing my research last night, the FIA Formula E World Championships fan base hit new heights in 22-23, up 17% year on year to 344 million views, with 225 million viewers tuning in over Season 9's Formula E international fan base increased. So it is now the fourth largest motorsport, and it's just about to overtake NASCAR.
Okay, great.
So why on earth are they making it a paid sport to watch?
It's a very good question. Well, I feel like, I think the reason is that, so Formula E is basically moving from, we were on Channel 4, which is obviously free to air, and we're now moving behind the paywall to TNT, or have done. We've had 2 races this season. And I think the thinking behind it is, obviously TNT is a tailored sports audience. Channel 4, you maybe are tuning in on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. That is a very general audience that might not really want to watch Formula E. They probably want to watch something else.
Who does watch Formula in the sense of, do you think does somebody with an electric car watch Formula E to justify why they love their electric cars, or because they love electric cars?
No.
Who are you finding gets into the sport? Why should I give Formula E a go over Formula 1, or make that the extra time to watch and view?
Because we probably have more overtakes in one race than Formula 1 has had in the whole season.
Okay.
There you go. That's one reason.
So give me a rundown of how, a rundown for the audience and people that love their motorsport. Give me some bullet points. Formula E is about 34 to 40 lap racing.
Yeah, very good.
The batteries last around about that long.
Yeah,
even at full chat. And where have you been so far this year? Because it's already up and running, right?
Yeah, so we've already raced in Mexico City, which is the same location as the F1 circuit, just a slightly different layout. 40,000 people there, huge audience in the stadium, like sellout crowd, incredible atmosphere. Like, the Mexican fans are undoubtedly the best fans in the world. We had a great race there. Then 2 weeks later, we went to Saudi Arabia for a double header. It was a night race, so 2 night races, Friday night and Saturday night. Looks fantastic. Again, atmosphere's amazing. Obviously, we're in Saudi. You can imagine the production that comes with that. You know, drone shows, Backstreet Boys playing in the evening, Adrian Brody, Helena Christensen on the grid. Like, it was incredible. The racing was properly nail-biting stuff. Now, I would love, just if anyone watching or listening, if you just go and watch one Formula E race and then put in the comments below what you actually think. Because I promise you, the racing is amazing. It's wheel to wheel. There
I
are so many passes.
I have heard that. I've heard a lot of people.
It's just about the perfect attention span. Let's be honest. Who doesn't have a little nap sometimes in the F1? Just a quick dose. It's like, 45 minutes. And they're the best races in, some of the best races in the world. Former F1 drivers, Le Mans winners, World Endurance champions, DTM champions. They're like the best.
So does Formula E race because Formula E is a good sport then, and because it's fun and engaging and everything that you just spoke about, into why we should watch Formula E race? Or does Formula E race to be there for sustainability and for the future of electric vehicles?
I think both. Like, Formula E's got to be there to entertain, and also, just a side note, Formula E is not a replacement for Formula One. It's like, just because you have another child doesn't mean you love your first child any less. Formula One will always be there, and the love for that will always be there. Doesn't mean that Formula E can't have its own place. So it's not like one or the other. You can watch both and be fans of both. They just have different attributes, just like my children. They're different people.
You present with Karun Chandhok, who's also frequently on the telly screens of Sky F1, who I love as a presenter as well. And I'm pretty sure he's a real big fan of both points as well.
Yes, true.
Does this mean that after seeing one of your electric vehicles outside on the road, and also knowing that you're quite passionate about that world, are you an advocate for the world of electric cars?
I mean, I've got to be, right? It's like, don't get me wrong. I know I am the same as you. I would love a noisy V8, V10 any day. But ultimately, we do actually need to think about the planet at some point. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but having been in Mexico, where it is one of the most densely populated city, or Mexico City, one of the most densely populated cities in the world, their traffic is horrendous. If you walk down the street, you feel like you're inhaling 60 cigarettes. It is disgusting.
I've been to India, which is similar.
We are getting very used to how lucky we are that in cities in the UK, the air pollution is getting so much better. And there's only one reason for that. Obviously, the cars are moving towards either hybrid or electric, zero emission at the tailpipe. So there's just there isn't a choice.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that's a very valid point about the fact, because you actually, as you mentioned, you've always been in London. That's been your base, despite the fact you've been lucky enough to see all parts of the globe with your eyes and can kind of come back to it. So you are noticing a change in London with the air pollution.
100%, absolutely.
Mm.
Do you know? You don't.
No. I don't live in London, so it's quite. I've never heard anybody actually talk positive, because when people talk about the ULEZ, people, it's all negative. It's all just negative. You never actually hear anything to do with it being good. So it's the first time you're like, whoa, okay, I was expecting someone to just destroy that. Yeah. But
so I think it's obviously it's a long journey and it's small increments, so you don't notice it instantly because you just get used to the change. But if you're then taken out of the situation, you go to a city where pollution is really bad, you're like, oh, actually, we are making a difference here.
I think because one of the arguments will definitely be EVs are technically dirtier to build than normal vehicles. And if you take the US, the typical non-luxury EV needs to log up 70,000 miles on the clock before it actually sees a benefit over the production of a petrol vehicle.
You may name manufacturers.
Probably a mid-market Tesla. But I see the point with the air pollution, but there's a point that someone that understands as much about batteries as you do will also know that they have to be mined from somewhere. Yeah. And then what happens to them when they're done?
Yes, absolutely. But do you know what? We are like at the very, very first stage of this, and there are some incredible minds. I've been to a couple of universities that are already, they've found like alternatives to lithium. We're not going to have to use lithium ion batteries forevermore in an electric car. There are alternatives. It's like everyone says, oh, but if you're charging your car off the grid, you're using dirty energy. And it's like, well, actually, no, you can charge off the grid only when the grid is using green energy. So you know that the energy you're putting into your battery is green. So again, it's just like all these small things. Of course, it's not perfect. because we're at the very start of this journey. But we've got the brightest minds in the industry working really, really hard. A huge amount of money being invested in it, and it's changing and it's getting better. And every day, the electric cars are becoming greener in that manufacturing process. And yeah, of course, we're not going to use lithium for forevermore. And the way that, you know, cobalt is mined, it is changing. So I think we've just got to, instead of just writing it off, just appreciate that it's getting better every day.
Do you think it will take over, or do you think just like Formula One, it will end up sitting next to? Because a good example, I've seen you spend a lot of time. Am I right in saying that you have a BMW i8 tucked away somewhere,
I did
or you
have an
did
i8.
have an i8, which is the best of
Before
both worlds.
Children, God damn those little things. But now I have a very practical and very beautiful iX, which is great, fully electric.
Oh, I can't believe you got rid of the i8. But
Do you know what? And just before I had my firstborn, we got the Roadster, which is like just so beautiful, hardtop. But obviously it's only 2 seats. So really, when the first child arrived, it's like, I can't put you in the boot, can I? Legally, that's just not right. Morally,
we have also
not
just
right.
seen that parking tickets are an issue around where we are. How do you actually charge?
How do I get so many parking tickets?
Now, how do you charge the vehicles?
There's public charging around the corner.
Okay, so you just plug in public.
Yeah, I tend to do it at night time.
I was a complete dead against everything to do with the electric car wave from a perspective of, well, I just take it back to the grid can't cope, and if you don't solve the problem of the fact that on Christmas Day our grid's on 99.8% capacity when everybody switches on their ovens at 12 o'clock, and it nearly breaks, it's like, well, then how the hell are we going to put more electric vehicles on the roads? How are we going to cope?
Because
like,
not
before you
everyone
solve the
charges
initial
at the
problems,
same time.
which is true.
It's
because
like,
I've noticed,
it's like when there's a fuel crisis and then everyone goes to the petrol station. Yeah, in those situations, we're screwed. But that doesn't, you know, on a normal day-to-day basis, we don't all charge at the same time. The whole point of charging overnight is you charge overnight when the grid is not being used. And you can set it on a little timer. It's very smart.
Well, I think that might conclude our section on electric car debates because I'm done with it. But I do, that's quite fascinating about the air pollution, that you're actually generally noticing a difference in London from there being more electric vehicles on the road.
But also, like, don't get me wrong, obviously, you know where my heart is, but your head has got to think, I want my kids to live in a planet that will exist in a couple of 100 years. And if we carry on the way we're going, it's going to be a dark old world. It's not going to be a fun place to be.
Gun to your head, fun car for the weekend, BMW advocate. I'm going to offer you an M2 competition as your fun car for the rest of the time, or you can have the original i8 coupe back. Which one of you choose?
Well, I mean, obviously, I would go for the M2.
Do you see what the problem is for absolute advocates?
Totally.
There's still that bit where you just cannot resist.
Oh no, totally. But like, and I am all for that. You know, what it really upsets me that my kids will probably never drive an internal combustion engine car. They won't share the same passion that I do for cars, because going to, you know, a Goodwood, for example, how cool is that? Goodwood Revival, when you can hear all the like 1950s, 1960s, 70s engines roaring around the track. Amazing. But times change.
I find that interesting that you think that, because we're at a point where, say, Liberty Media own F1. Sky have just introduced Sky Kids for the Formula One. There's more junior viewers than ever watching watching motorsport, per se. Yet watching motorsport different to driving a, do you think it's the loss of huge programs like Top Gear, even though there is YouTube that is growing fastly, that is the reason kids don't care so much about cars anymore? Or do you think it's because they don't hear the pop and bang of something ridiculous coming down the road? It's turned into a piece of technology, you know, and, you know, when Dad used to like tinker with his cars outside in the driveway, or that would just be a part of your routine at the weekend. That doesn't happen anymore. You can't tinker, you know, okay, if you're an expert perhaps, but the majority of people used to be able to do a little bit of work on their car, for example, whereas now you can't touch it, you can't even get into. Do you think it's the same reason as like we don't really get excited over an iPhone? It's cool and it's a great bit of technology, exactly. But do you think people are starting to think of electric cars, especially in the sense of Teslas and kind of more dailies that aren't as exotic as an i8, as more of just it's just one of the tools I need to get around in life? I think so. I think
I mean, it is different, I suppose, because a lot of people, I think, that fall in love with cars, there is that sense of nostalgia, and maybe it reminds them of like childhood memories of, you know, having a pin-up car on your wall. You definitely had one.
I definitely had one. I did. It was a Lamborghini Aventador. Even though when I drove it, I hated it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, I drove down the road in an Aventador for the first time. I know that sounds absolutely horrendous, but
They say never meet your heroes.
I just changed gear in it. I was like, the gearbox is crappy. I can't hear the engine. The lot it's too wide. Like there was just so much stuff, and I was like, this is a letdown. This is. I much prefer something like a Hurricane that's smaller and yeah, just better.
First world problems.
Hey, you've had plenty of cool cars, so don't go at me with that.
I didn't complain though. I can't remember. I got distracted. Whatever I was saying.
Well, we were at the end of our electric car phase, Eddie, because I did want to talk about the fact that you are one of the most influential women on our TVs in motorsport out there, and it's a shame that on podcasts, even like this here, and getting into this section, almost when you're putting together these episodes, you feel the need to talk about women in motorsport, when really you'd never feel the need to want to talk about men in motorsport when coming onto a podcast. But then usually when I interview a female that is in motorsport, they have a story to tell about something.
Yeah.
However, I don't always think that should be the case if there isn't a story to tell about something. And I've grown up just really enjoying a matter of different women in motorsport on all types of screens. I listed some down last night. Like I used to watch Fifth Gear with Nikki Butler Henderson, and I remember Shabine Smits on Top Gear, and when she drove that van around the Nürburgring, just like being absolutely mind blown. And more recently, I got to meet Jamie Chadwick at the Formula One, like
a legend,
just dominated. You got Naomi Schiff, Natalie Pinkham, that are brilliant presenters on Sky F1. Is the world completely changing now, and is it a lot easier than it used to be? Or as you said, you've had a 15-20 year career in broadcasting now and partly in motorsport.
I'm going to go with 15.
15?
20,
I shouldn't have said that. I was thinking, don't say, oh, you said
like
it.
12, 15,
as I was saying it, I was going, don't say 20. Oh, shit, you said it. Let's try and backpedal. Have you noticed a change, or have you ever had any moments where you began that you felt that being a female in motorsport has affected your career development?
I think the opportunity for women in motorsport right now is mega. Like, because it's so different to how it was. You know, when I first started out, it was hard, and you just felt like a bit of an outsider. You know, it's difficult when 99.9% of the people you're working with are men. And don't get me wrong, all lovely people, are great teams, but it's just different working on a sort of all-male crew compared to having like a few girls around, because we are different, and that's okay, and we can celebrate that. You know, I like how we're constantly trying to like be on the same level, which is great, and I'm all for that. But at the same time, I don't think we should be shy and apologetic the fact that men are men and women are women, and we're different. And sometimes it's just much easier to get on with a load of women. So it's really fun right now working in motorsports, because honestly, up and down the pit lane, whatever pit lane you're in, you know, particularly I think F1 are doing a great job, Formula E are doing a great job, even in Goodwood where I work as well. It's much more like a 50-50 split. And you might not be able to see that necessarily in front of camera. Perhaps they're all behind the scenes roles, but as you say, a lot of the presenters, pit lane reporters, some of the drivers now are coming through as females, so they are the kind of shop window, and I think that's massively helped inspire the next generation of girls and women to get involved in motorsport, because they realise there is an opportunity for them. And you know, what's that old phrase? You know, you've got to see it to believe it, and so hopefully they're now seeing women do that role, so they want to be it. And that could be anything from working in, you know, PR, marketing, events, to engineer, mechanic, team principal, presenter, reporter, driver. It's like, the women are coming.
Well,
watch out, boys.
I damn hope they are. But then we have things like, what's the women's series was called?
F1 Academy or W Series.
Well, it's F1 Academy now. It was W Series.
Yes.
But then W Series is...
Sadly, W Series is no longer, mainly just due to sponsorship and funding.
So then that doesn't always paint the best picture, because there's been some fantastic drivers. I watched a video the other day, and I rarely well up or get anything over anything. I watched it 3 times.
Wow.
I genuinely had a tear in my eye, which was Jessica Hawkins in the green Aston Martin driving that F1 car. And I was just like, there was a moment when Latifi was absolutely crap at Williams, and there was just that little glimmer of a hint at Jamie Chadwick with that kind of link there. And you thought, are we going to see Jamie Chadwick in a Formula One car? Are we? And question, because you come at it from a scientific angle as well. We know from an all matter of sports that naturally men are just more slightly muscular when it comes to football. Bullies, basically, or just slightly bigger bullies occasionally. Yeah. How do you think a female would fare, even if she gave it her all and was at the top of the talent, against guys in the same car?
This is a really difficult question because I am not a racing driver. So it's difficult for me to say. However, my personal opinion is that when you look at the difference between men and women and you're at the top of their game, you are talking the tiniest little incremental difference can be the difference of you're at the top or the bottom. You know, look at how competitive it is in Formula One or Formula E. And in every single other sport, men don't compete with women. And that is because we are made differently. Physically, mentally, like, we are different. And the difference, that tiny, tiny difference, you know, if you look at I don't know, tennis, for example, you've got obviously the same equipment, but women don't compete against men. I mean, we basically do 2/3 of what the men do in terms of, you know, the number of sets. And I just think to put men and women in Formula One or in a motor racing series together, I do think our physical attributes will play a part in the performance.
So do you think it's then beneficial to put a female in an F1 car? Or it's a tough one, because I then ask the question, if that does happen, and that one person has that almost huge weight of responsibility for all women that love motorsport on their shoulders, if they flopped as a driver or just the performance wasn't there, would that then axe it forever, do you think? Do you think there's almost like a critical defining moment? I did look to Williams as being the team that might have had that ability to make that happen.
I definitely think you can have men and women on the same sheet in F1. It's just going to be a really hard journey to find and prepare those girls and women to make sure that they're, like, not just at the top, but they're like
super athletes.
You've got to be right up there.
You can't just find a driver, you have to find the Lewis Hamilton of female drivers,
kind of. And that's going to take time, you know. That's going to take, which is what the F1 Academy are doing. You know, you're looking at 15-16-year-olds, and you've got to get them in really early and give them the experience and the exposure and the practice that they need to be able to then walk into an F1 car and do a good job. So I think it will happen. I just think it's going to take a lot of time.
How do you have so much confidence to stand in front of a camera when that countdown goes 5, 4, 3, 2? And because here, if we fuck up, we just, you know, click the camera, cut it out, record again. But it's a different environment when you've got one take. Has that always just come naturally? Have you had to develop any skills to be able to do that?
Practice. Yeah. I mean, you've got to practice. I mean, it just, and you can't really practice not live, so it just comes with experience. And I love live TV. I love hearing that countdown because it's like exhilarating. It's like the start of a race, and that's what I thrive on. I also do like doing a beautifully crafted program,
feature film.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not a feature film, not quite there yet. But you know,
I don't have any of the terminology.
So like for 5 years, I had a show on CNN called Supercharged, and it was a features program, half an hour show, and it was, you know, we'd spend a whole day maybe creating a 5-minute segment in the show, and it was, you know, lots of beautiful shots, and we'd do a really long interview that we'd edit down into 3 minutes, and it's lovely. But if I had to choose between the two, live TV every time.
And you still managed to keep that going despite the fact that you moved into a different phase of life. And as you mentioned, and you can't quite get over, you have 3 children.
Who am I? Literally, I like when I say my life outside, when I say my life out loud, I'm like, I have 3 children. Mad. I still see myself as like a 21-year-old. Yeah. So I have 3 children. Wow. But I also have spent quite a lot of time trying and deciding the best way to create a really like safe home environment where the kids are really happy and I can still go to work and I can still travel. You know, it hasn't happened overnight. But I've put a lot of time and effort in. We have now, she's just sort of started full time this year. Well, 4 days a week. We have this amazing nanny who I know the kids are really happy with, but it took a long time to get to that point. My husband, you know, he works, but he doesn't really travel. So he's around obviously to always do like pickups and bedtimes in the morning. So, you know, there's one of us always there with the kids. And I 100% am a better mum for it, because when I go to work, I love it. And then when I come home, I love being with the kids.
You just answered. That was the question I was going to answer. Was there ever a doubt in your mind when you had your first child that it would affect your career in any way?
Totally. It's, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's hard. I've had to go back to work way earlier than most people would. And there's definitely been some challenges along the way. I mean, I maybe went back a little early occasionally. Maybe didn't do my finest work, but I felt like I had to go back to cling on to various jobs. And
there with a microphone like that.
I mean, you're not far wrong. Like, you know, I did. I were happy to say I breastfed all three of my children when they were, you know, till at least 6, one of them 9 and the other one 12 months old. You know, I took my bloody pump around the world. I mean, it was hysterical, the things I got up to.
You took the children around the world as well.
I took the children around as well.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. See, that bit I didn't realise.
Well, only occasionally. No, actually, to be honest, they came to, so with my third, I did Goodwood when she was 6 weeks old. But I sort of deemed any international travel just is much safer and a much better place for them to be at home where it's safe and all their sort of home comforts, rather than be like, right, I'm taking you around to Mexico City. It's like, actually, they can stay at home and I'll see you in a couple of days.
So what does your average month look like as a sports broadcaster?
Yes, that's a good question. Usually quite mad. So this month has been quite busy because we've had 2 races. So this month, for example, went to Mexico City for 5 days, had a race there, came back, had about 48 hours at home. Then I had a job in Orlando. So I basically went back to where I came from and I was there for 24 hours. Did a job there, came back, spent a week with the kids. And also when I am at home, I'm really at home, which is quite nice. So I do then all the school drop-offs, pickups, food, bedtimes, you know, all of that stuff. Basically being a mum. So it's very much like all or nothing, I feel. Like when I'm away, I'm not really doing anything. But when I'm at home, I'm really at home, as opposed to working every day, Monday to Friday, when it's just constant state of madness. And then came back, had a week with the kids, and then went to Saudi, and then had a week sort of chilling this week, just doing bits and bobs, fun things like this.
See, I've got several friends and a kind of acquaintances, girls that I follow. There's a really cool girl called Abby. She's doing loads of stuff. She's my age, with the kind of motor racing, the bikes, that kind of stuff, and getting into presenting.
Nice.
I've got a friend called Grace who does a lot of presenting at kind of all sorts of car shows and creating videos and content around it. Now, I can see when I put together all the parts of your story why different skills that has enabled you to kind of get to where you've got to today. And one of them is the fact that although you sit opposite with this great big grin and smile and act all lovely, I can definitely see from maybe a financial background there is a proper hard-nosed negotiator in there.
Oh, yeah, I kind of like that.
And where I'm going with it is those girls would love to understand. I chose not to, but those girls would probably love to understand how somebody properly gets paid and gets the position to actually negotiate being on those big those big brand deals and the big deals. How do you manage your life? Do you have to win contracts with like Formula E to go and work with them for a certain amount of seasons?
Yeah.
Do you do all that yourself, or do you have any kind of outside help?
I mean, so I have an agent, lovely Ed from Insanity, but I do find that a lot of it actually does just come from me. Ed is brilliant, you know, and I would say, as you know, they are there to help open doors, but motorsport is a very small industry, and you know, they're mainly my contacts. So it's like if
go
anyone,
to races,
that people will either come to me if they want me, or I'll go to them and suggest, oh, wouldn't it be cool to do something? So I would say that having an agent is very important and like absolutely fundamental to just things like logistics and invoicing. And if it was down to me, I mean, although I am financially minded, I am quite disorganized when it comes to paperwork, and if I didn't have an agent, I probably would never send an invoice out, so I probably wouldn't actually get paid. So thank God for Ed. So he makes sure I actually get the money I'm due.
But it's your network that gets you the jobs. It's building up a network and just
your network, your contacts, your passions. You know, if you suddenly think, actually, I like the idea of doing that. I think I am also quite entrepreneurial. I like the challenge of sort of being, it's sort of almost like being a startup industry, isn't it? You're working for yourself. You know, I started my YouTube channel. That was like, right, who can I pull in to help me out? From videographers to editors to...
And why would somebody that's doing very well in the world of Formula E and getting all the presenting jobs under the sun, has got 3 children they're trying to manage and the whole kind of life just go... I tend to find with everybody that comes on the podcast, you guys are always looking for the next challenge.
Yes.
Or the next thing. Is that why you would start a YouTube channel? What made you do it?
So weirdly, the YouTube channel sort of came up, it was a while ago, and I don't really do, so I had Shields Drives. What a name.
God, say it for us one more time.
Shields Drives. I think that's what it was called anyway. No, so I loved doing that, but it took up a lot of time and energy, and then the presenting stuff sort of took over and I couldn't really juggle both, and so that YouTube channel has taken a back seat. But what hasn't taken a back seat is electrifying.com, which is another YouTube channel, digital platform that I am heavily involved in with Ginny Buckley, the sort of co-founder, and we started it together at the beginning of COVID, and it's sort of a one-stop shop for everything you need to know about electric cars, and that's doing really well, and I love it because I love the people I work with. And that, I would say, is also a bit of random advice for anyone that, you know, wants to get into presenting. I think ultimately you do need to choose and find a job that you enjoy and that you like working with. You know, there are obviously bigger channels that I have had offers from to go and work for, but I don't want to do that because I love my little
bubble that you're currently in.
The projects that I'm doing and the people that I'm working with and the team that I'm on, and ultimately that's what's important to me, and that is probably something that I've learned with age, even though I'm so young still.
What is the key difference between someone that is able to present a YouTube video and do multiple takes and then put that together and film to someone that presents on live TV?
Well, yeah, live TV is quite different to a YouTube channel because I think YouTube, you're basically just talking about what you want to talk about because you're probably in charge of your own script and you're producing your own stuff, and you know, you are creating content that suits you. Whereas obviously live presenting, I am presenting somebody else's show. You know, we have a big production meeting. There's a massive running order. There's loads of moving parts. You've got 10 seconds to throw to this VT, i.e. a feature. Then you've got to come off the back of it. And then you've got to throw to JJ, who's down in the pit lane, and he's with blah-de-blah, blah-de-blah. And then you've got to, you know,
remember their names.
2 people talking in your ear, like, yeah, be here, no, be there. And then you're live on the grid, and then all your comms goes down. So then you suddenly can't hear anyone. And you've got the sort of floor manager by the camera going, you're on in 5, and you're like, oh god, but I can't hear anyone, so I don't know how long I've got to talk. And then you just sort of wing it for a bit. It's just like being really, really reactive, and sometimes it goes smoothly, but you've got to be prepared for when things, maybe if you do have a technical issue, like sound goes down.
So explain, how many people does it take to kind of run your team in Formula E that put a show live? How many moving parts are there to put something like that out? And have you learned a lot about that as well in the process of doing it?
It's amazing to be part of a big production. I think that's the other thing. Like when I have my YouTube channel, it's you're kind of on your own doing your own thing.
Switch on 2 cameras and a light and start talking.
Whereas I love being part of a big production and having a crew, and I bounce off other people's energy and working with them. I mean, so for example, if you split, imagine when you're watching a race, whether it's Formula E or Formula One, you've got the sort of the track cut. So i.e. when you see cars on track, and you've got cameramen and women, camera people, maybe 15 cameras, 20 cameras all around the track. Then you've obviously got all the in-car cameras. Then you've got extra GoPros. Anyway, there's a lot of people that does that stuff. Then you have kind of separate it out into your presentation team. And that is, we call it the English language show. But that's a completely different team. And that would be maybe like a couple of presenters, a couple of pundits, commentator. Then you've got a couple of sound guys, maybe 3 or 4 cameramen, a couple of producers, floor managers, directors, then production managers, assistants. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a big crew.
And that crew, ultimately, through you presenting on that show and doing a brilliant job, has led you to have some opportunities that when you were that girl driving those go-karts, which you probably told them when you got in to and behind the wheel of a Formula E car.
Yes, that was cool. Yeah, good. I'm glad you reminded me of all these like career-defining moments. That was so cool because apart from having, I think, maybe 2, it was Catherine and Michaela Truzzi who had basically they were female Formula E drivers. I was the first female from the media to drive the Formula E car. So how'd
you angle that one?
Yeah, exactly. Just sort of rephrase that. And that was awesome. We were at Donington, and Virgin, as they were called at the time, very kindly gave me their car to drive, and we did a feature for CNN. And it was so cool. It was amazing. It was just suddenly to be able to drive a single-seater, because I'd never driven like a single-seater race car of that standard ever. And it was a very special experience. And just things like, being able to hear the engine noise and hear the tyre noise, because normally obviously the engine is so loud if you're in an internal combustion engine car. So you could just sort of hear the battery whirring and the tyres on the track. And it was just a very kind of not serene experience, but just very different to having done any track, like compared to any other track day.
And I'm sorry I didn't research this part, but is your dad still around?
Yes, he is.
So you're able to, what did he think, being, obviously he's able to think back and think about you in his arm on a Sunday watching the Formula One, and then you're suddenly in a Formula E car. Do you share those kind of moments?
Yeah, we really do. And I think especially when I first got into Formula E, Alain Prost was one of the team owners. So I spent a lot of time interviewing him, getting to know him in the first couple of years. And I think that was, and introduced him to my dad at a couple of the races. And I think that was quite special because obviously Prost was like one of my dad's heroes and was obviously someone that we always watched together. And then suddenly I'm like working with him. It was like, wow, this is so cool.
And Formula E, I know Steve in the corner. I always like to mention Steve in the corner.
Hey, Steve in the corner.
One of
he's waving.
Someone that Steve talks to is Jake Dennis, he was last season's Formula E world champion.
Yes.
Right, and he's driving this year as well.
He is, yeah, Andretti.
So explain, Andretti have had a bad week where they got rejected from getting into Formula One, which I was really surprised about actually. I think the FIA and F1 are kind of doing that at the minute a little bit.
I'm not giving up because it would be so cool to have them in.
So does Jake just dominate the Formula E series? For someone like me that is going to take your advice, and I genuinely will watch a race, and I will send you a photo of me sat watching a race.
I appreciate that.
And I will have a go and I will give some feedback.
Give me the feedback. Give me the comments.
On what I think.
Be brutal.
But
you won't be able
does
to
he dominate Formula E like Max Verstappen dominates Formula One?
Who are you? No.
No,
absolutely
I don't
not.
know.
This is why you need to watch Formula E. The championship goes right down to the wire. Last weekend, 2 points in it. Never before have we seen Max Verstappen dominance in Formula E. Yeah. No, it's great. That's why we love it. You never know who's going to win the championship until, promise you, second to last race, Jake managed to seal it. But there were 3 other championship contenders in the final race weekend. And that has been the case every season apart from one. And that was in COVID, so it didn't count when it was one earlier. But so no, Jake is great, but there is he was lucky's not the right word. He was very consistent in his Formula E season, and he was a very strong driver. But the championship last year could have gone to Nick Cassidy. It could have gone to Mitch Evans. It was not a done deal.
We see drivers usually when they're in that kind of world as well, showing all kinds of emotions. And because the media is constantly on them and what's going on, we get to see their highs, their lows. I remember seeing, and I actually felt really sorry for him at the time because I think he gets a hell of a lot of stick. But Lance Stroll let a lot out, I think, last year. And you could see a lot of emotion of that driver. So it's clear to see that all drivers have highs and lows in their career and have to kind of get through them. But looking from the outside on someone that looks to just be such a happy, grinning presenter in all forms of motorsport, everything they do, and has it all just been easy then? What's been one of the toughest challenges you've overcome?
Wow. I don't know if there's, I'm sure maybe as we're talking something will come up because you're good at sparking my memory on things. I think it's just the, obviously starting out in a career that you don't know if you have a future or a place in is really hard. So I think anyone that's watching that wants to start this, you've really got to back yourself, which is hard. It's not that easy but you've got to be confident. But when you are starting out in a new career where you maybe don't know many people and you don't know if you're any good, it's difficult. So it's that constant going over in your head, like, should I be doing this? Is this right? You're constantly questioning yourself. And just, really just over time, like, with experience, you do just have to grow your own confidence and you do back yourself. And it's like, oh, okay, I did do that quite well. Okay, I did do that. Oh, okay, didn't do that, but never mind. Let's focus on this now. I think the other piece of advice I would say, sorry, I'm giving advice, which I know it's not the question, but while we're on it, is, you won't get every job you go for. And like, that doesn't matter. And I used to, if I didn't get a job that I'd gone for, God, it used to eat me up. And I would be so angry at myself. Like, well, why didn't I get it? Like, that's not fair. I should have got it. I'm better than them. Like, why? And actually, it's like, that's such sort of bad energy. And there is just no point because you're not going to get it. It's gone to someone else. And they had their own reasons. Who knows what those reasons are? It doesn't really matter. But it wasn't right for you. There are loads of jobs out there. It doesn't matter if you didn't get that one.
So is it just time that's taught you that?
Yeah, I think so. Time, experience. Probably time. Just so I'm a wise old lady now. But things that go about, I don't really know if there's anything like really. I'm trying to think.
Because some people, it just seems that they can set themselves up, and especially when they're quite analytical and financially divined and definitely hard-nosed away from the smiley face, seem to navigate life quite well and navigate careers quite well. And that's fine. Not everybody has to have those moments where it's like, oh, it nearly killed me. Like, I didn't think I was going to get through it. But that's why we like talking to different people about different stories.
I just feel like every week, every day is like this. You go from like, and it's the same like with work. It's the same with the kids. It's like I go from this moment with the kids and I'm like, oh, this is just gorgeous. This moment is heaven. This is what life is about. God, I love them so much. To, I swear to God, 30 seconds later, I want to kill them. They're like, oh my God, how can you be so annoying? And I feel like that is just sort of, you just have to navigate that and just try and come out on top.
Do you get ever tied up in the numbers and viewership of the stuff that you're presenting?
No,
do you not at all?
Because I just love what I'm doing. So this is the other thing. If there was one person watching or 10 million people watching, it wouldn't affect how I feel about a production because it's all about who you're working with, the level of the production, the people, the sport. Like, that's what I care about. If it was a really bad production with 10 million people watching, I don't want to do it. If it's a good production with good people and one person watching, I want to do that one. And that's genuine.
Nicki, it's been amazing to talk to you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this podcast, and thank you for coming on Road to Success. You were fantastic, and I wish you all the best with everything that you're going to be doing. And hopefully,
I won't strangle the children
again soon.
Thank you.